Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We now have just 8 days left in Donald Trump's presidency. It cannot end soon enough. The House of Representatives on the verge of impeaching Trump for the second time. Late this morning, before leaving to visit the border wall that is not even close to being completed, let alone on Mexico's dime, the president answered questions about the deadly riot at the Capitol for the first time since it's happened.
As far as this is concerned, we want no violence, never violence. We want absolutely no violence. And on the impeachment, it's really a continuation of the greatest witch hunt in the history of politics. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. This impeachment is causing tremendous anger, and you're doing it, and it's really a terrible thing that they're doing. For Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to continue on this path, I think it's causing tremendous danger to our country, and it's causing tremendous anger. I want no violence. Thank you very much.
Uniter in chief. No remorse, no regret, no responsibility, typical Trump. But worse than ever, I want to bring in Andrew Whitman now, senior political correspondent, with the latest from D.C. and impeachment. And it is not just Democrats who have had enough of Trump.
It's not, Rich, but I'm going to start in Texas, where we heard from the president again this afternoon. After reviewing the border wall, Trump addressed the riot and impeachment, noting that the nation was divided after the election, but he took no responsibility for that. And that COVID made the nation angrier, though he took no responsibility for that either. Trump then told this obvious lie.
Respect for law enforcement and the great people within law enforcement, so many are here, is the foundation of the MAGA agenda. And we're a nation of law, and we're a nation of order.
Why he would make that claim about the MAGA agenda with these images fresh in the minds of Americans, the president didn't explain that either. Also today, for the first time since the riot, we got a briefing from prosecutors and law enforcement. The FBI has opened 160 case files thanks to 100,000 media tips from the public, and they confirmed they did have intel about the attack before it happened. Worth noting, the briefing was done by the acting director of the FBI field office for D.C. and the acting U.S. attorney for D.C., not the acting attorney general or the FBI director that you'd expect to hear in a case like this. These two outline the charges filed so far and the many more they expect to file later.
We're looking at everything from simple trespass to theft of mail, to theft of digital devices inside the Capitol, to assault on local officers, federal officers both outside and inside the Capitol, to the theft of potential national security information or national defense information, to felony murder, and even civil rights excessive force investigations. We're looking at significant felony cases tied to sedition and conspiracy.
Felony cases tied to sedition and conspiracy. Next to the Capitol and their pending actions against the president, the House is preparing to vote on a non-binding resolution demanding Vice President Pence gather the cabinet and invoke the 25th Amendment, removing Trump from office. That vote will pass the House, but it has no force in law. Pence will not, well, he's expected to ignore the demand. Pence's refusal will lead to an impeachment vote in the House Wednesday. The resolution already has 218 co-sponsors, enough for impeachment to pass. Liz Cheney, the number 3 Republican in the House, among the first 2 House Republicans to say they will vote to impeach. And word today, Republicans are not whipping the vote. Members are free to vote their consciences. But there are still questions about what happens beyond tomorrow. There's talk of passing impeachment, then not sending it to the Senate for 100 days, allowing the Senate to work on other issues. President-elect Biden is looking for ways the Senate can spend part of its time doing impeachment while also confirming his nominees and taking other actions. There remains a motion for the president to censure the president for lawmakers to consider. Long-shot attempts to bar Trump from seeking office ever again, and ongoing pushes to expel or otherwise penalize members of Congress who aided and abetted the riot. Meanwhile, The Times is reporting late this afternoon, McConnell telling colleagues he thinks Trump did commit impeachable offenses and that he's glad Democrats are moving to impeach because that'll make it easier to purge Trump from the party. Finally, if the GOP's incitement of the mob last week wasn't dangerous enough, turns out House Republicans introduced another danger. While the Capitol was under lockdown, Democrats and Republicans sheltered together in hearing rooms. Democratic lawmakers tried to give out masks to Republicans who refused them and mocked the Democrats. Since then, 3 Democratic lawmakers have tested positive for COVID. All are convinced they got it from Republicans during the riot. Fines will now be instituted for anyone not masked in a federal building. Rich?
Tomorrow we will have a vote for impeachment. As you said, Mike Pence is not going to go there.
No.
For the first time since the riot, he actually had a conversation with the president yesterday to be a fly on the wall. All right, Andrew. we're hearing as many as 10 Republicans in the House could join, and there is a sense that the absence of any contrition from the president makes it more telling for Republicans that, they can't even point to him feeling bad that he won't touch the hot stove again. We'll play that clip later on from a Republican senator that he learned his lesson. We heard that after Charlottesville. We heard that after Ukraine. We heard that too many times to count. He can't learn lessons. I don't know. I think it's fascinating what you reported in terms of McConnell welcoming this. A lot of Republican senators, more than a handful, seem ready to join Democrats in the Senate. They'd need 17. But would you be shocked if a dozen Republicans in the House tomorrow voted to impeach?
I think it could be more than a dozen. I do. This is going to be a self-interest vote, both in the House and the Senate when they eventually get around to impeachment. Liz Cheney doesn't feel electoral pressure. She's not in a particularly...
She's the third-ranking Republican in the House.
She is, but she's also something of an independent entity in Wyoming. She's a household name in Wyoming. So she's sort of like Mitt Romney. She's not feeling electoral pressure. Other Republicans might, but anybody who's not is really going to be able to make that choice on their own. I mean, there's 211 Republicans in the House, 140 voted for the Gohmert thing a couple of weeks ago. That might be the number about there again. So you could see 60 or 70 Republicans vote.
That would be amazing. And that would, again, push back in the president's argument. This is just some Democratic move. We're going to be playing later in the hour, Andrew, and talking with Bob Kerrey, former senator, who I know cannot recognize the Capitol anymore. And he said this is flat-out sedition. He believes statute kind of mandates where lawmakers have to go because this is such definable sedition, including from colleagues that aided and abetted against national interests. We are in a uncharted territory in terms of the calendar. Do you believe that when it gets through the House, the Senate, there's two different versions I'm hearing, they would split the day half and half on basically confirming cabinet and immediate business and doing the trial, or that they'd wait 100 days and pick it up at that point after the new administration has started?
I think the 100 days is a risky move that will be subject to a lawsuit, because I'm not sure, nobody's sure, if you can impeach somebody from the government who's not in the government. And at that point, 100 days into the Biden administration, Trump won't be in the government anymore. So I think they'd be wise to get it started as best they can. The way to split the day would be the best way to do it, because otherwise, like, they either need to start it immediately and try to get it wrapped up by the time Biden gets in office. Otherwise, it will interfere in trying to confirm Biden's cabinet members and his national security team.
Amazingly,
it's really going to be hamstrung.
Amazingly, the president seems to be doing everything in his power to further incentivize people to get going on this. He is being both unsympathetic, and for people who are hiding under desks, they feel he has no control.
There's talk about trying to get Republicans to switch the majority to Democrats before the 19th so that they can start the process faster. That's also on the table.
Andrew, thank you very much. If this past year and now start of 2021 have united this country in any way, it's in loss. So many of you have lost loved ones, so many more economic security, and all of us have lost the faith that we live in a United States. Now, I'm far more fortunate than too many. I still have my family and I have my job. This past week, however, I did lose something of value to me, and that is a friend. The last 4 years, they have been exhausting for all of us. Politics has always been the source of drama, even long before Trump, whether it be at the Thanksgiving table, the break room at work, or over a beer with a buddy. It is one of the many reasons when I'm not on the air, I try to avoid like the plague any debates that include the name Donald J. Trump. It's just not worth it. Now, the key word there is try. As we all know, the toxicity that is our president has infected all of our conversations and even relationships. For me, this just cost me a friendship of more than 30 years. Now, for sake of conversation, let's call my friend Sam. Sam and I have never agreed politically, but our differences never clouded the fact that we had a lot more in common than we didn't. Sure, we'd bust each other's chops and threaten to move to Canada if a big election didn't go our way. But it was always said with a laugh. We lost a common friend not many years ago, And Sam couldn't have been more compassionate to his widow and kids. If you needed someone in a pinch, he was there. He was funny, honorable, he was dependable. I'd hope he'd say the same of me. But for the past 4 years, and if I'm honest, maybe a little longer than that, Sam's rants stopped being delivered with a laugh. Sam's Rust Belt city saw its manufacturing jobs gradually disappear, and his own company was first bought by a European conglomerate, and then eventually the jobs too followed overseas. Now, for reasons I still don't understand, Sam always blamed somebody for this. It was the Democrats in his eyes, even though his problems started under Bush and the final betrayal happened 2 years ago under Trump. Sam blamed a lot of other folks as well. Somehow, immigrants were stealing all the jobs. When it was pointed out that he wouldn't even mow his own lawn, let alone be deprived of a job in landscaping, he lashed out and even defended separating families and putting kids in cages. That was almost the final straw for me. But in the past year, police reform protests, they were an ignition for Sam. Rants followed that came very close to those people. Trump was always blameless, but always apparently gutsy enough to tell it like it is. The same Sam who used to have a poster on his wall in college of the miracle on ice with the U.S. beating the Russians was defending Trump's bootlicking of Putin. Suddenly, my friend who never owned a gun was telling me that Biden was going to come for his guns. Antifa was everywhere. Even though he and his family were on Obamacare, it was a sign of socialism. Masks, they were a sign of oppression, and hell no, he wouldn't get a vaccine. In recent years, we started talking less. It was just too hard. I noticed he was always itching for a verbal fight, and he kept veering farther and farther from, well, just basic facts. So I began to ask him, who was feeding him this baseless conspiracies? And I gotta tell you, my jaw dropped. Sam, he drives a lot for his current job, and he was being fed a daily diet of Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin. He's listened to podcasters like the Ben Shapiros of the world. Our breaking point came after he said we had to stop the steal, and I warned him that that kind of crap was gonna get somebody killed. Then came Wednesday. So outraged by the coup that costumed domestic terrorists carried out on my capital that I didn't follow my better judgment, and the following day I texted my friend Sam that this is what dangerous lies and irresponsible lawmakers lead to. Stop listening to these guys. You're better than that, end quote. He responded, of course, and he said, freedom isn't free. Patriots sometimes need to make loud statements to be heard, end quote. That was the end of our friendship. Now, some of you, I'm sure, think I probably stayed too long with someone that wasn't worth the time. I disagree. Sam was a good man, a good husband, a good father, and for a long time, a very good friend. Now, a lot of people might share your worldview, but let's be honest. A lot of them are selfish, dishonest, unreliable, or just bad company. Sam was none of those things. And if we just disagreed about politics, I wouldn't be sharing this story with you tonight. But Sam changed. And he's changed for a lot of reasons, but I believe, or maybe I just want to believe, that really the real fake news made Sam and tens of millions of people like him into foot soldiers for a cause that they can't really explain, and for a man not worth my friend's time on his best day. I meant it when I said that Sam was better than that. But I'm afraid I'll never find out if I'm proven right. All right, when we come back, Bob Kerrey, he joins to discuss what the former senator would do to punish Trump if he was still in Washington.